What's going on, everyone, and thank you for subscribing to my All About Compression course. This will be a advanced course on compression where I'm going over different compression techniques and different types of compression circuits. If you're looking for a basic uh, course about compression, about how to use compression, I have a free course up called Basics of Compression. Uh, Watch that first and then come back to this one because in this course I won't be going over um, things like the basic controls of a compressor. I'm taking for granted that you already know that. To introduce myself, tell you more about me, I'm an audio engineer in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been engineering for over 15 years, and most of my work comes in recording, mixing, and mastering, mostly in pop, hip hop, rap genre. And when we talk about compressors, there's many different type of compressors out on the market. All have different circuit types, as we're about to get into in a second. After this course, you should be able to, identify different compressor types and also understand when, in certain situations, you would want to use a certain type of compressor. So let's get right into it and let's talk about the different types of compressors. So there's four main different types of compressors. The first one we're going to talk about is the opto compressor. The opto compressor is known for its smooth compression, and it also has automatic attack and release times. It has a slower attack and release. Is known for that characteristic. Uh, the automatic attack and release time. So what that means is that instead of you choosing what the attack and the release is, an opto compressor would decide that for you. It's going to take a look at the audio signal coming in, and it's going to automatically determine the attack and release time. Um, and LA2A is arguably the most famous opto compressor that's been made. It's very popular on vocals and bass. And really cool thing about the opto compressor is that it uses a light bulb to determine its gain. So what happens is as the signal comes into an opto compressor and it crosses the threshold and the compressor starts to act, the brighter the light bulb will illuminate. The brighter the illumination, the more gain reduction that happens. Now, opto compressors, like I said, have a slower attack and release time, and that's because as we get into the other different types of compressors, that light bulb turning on and off doesn't happen as quickly as a what a fast attack and fast release would be on these other type of compressors. So we'll take a look also at LA2A and go over how the controls on that work. But that is a opto compressor. You want to mostly remember that it's known for smooth and slower attack and releases. The next one is the FET compressor, which stands for a field effect transistor. This is really the complete opposite of an opto compressor. An FET has a very extremely fast attack time and release time. When you see attack time, it's mostly listed in milliseconds. A FET compressor can get into microseconds with its attack time, so extremely fast. And the 1176 is arguably the most famous FET compressor that was made. There's many different revisions of that. We'll take a look at an 1176 as well and go over the controls and how to use it. The next one is the Very Mu. The Very Mu uses a vacuum tube, so it is a tube compressor. There's usually a lack of ratio on a Very Mu. It's usually used for mastering purposes. We'll take a look at one of these as well. The Very Mu does not have a very fast attack and release time. And if you want to look at a extremely popular Very Mu compressor, you have the Fairchild. The 660, I believe, is the mono version, and the 670, I believe, is the stereo version of the Fairchild. Um, Very Mu compressors are, or can be, extremely expensive. I think the only people that I can think of off the top of my head that still make a very mu compressor. A lot of people don't make them anymore because they're so expensive, but Manly Labs makes a very mu, and I think it's between $3,000 and $4,000, and I think they have a mastering version for about 5,000. So that's the very mu. We'll take a look at one of those. And the last one is VCA. The VCA compressor, which stands for a voltage controlled amplifier. The VCA is the most modern technology, I'll say, in compressors. They're they provide all of the basic controls, your threshold ratio, attack, and release, and they're also extremely accurate. Um and because they're the most cost effective, most compressors built today are based off of a VCA design. The SSL bus compressor is a very popular VCA type of compressor. So out of those four, like I say, the Opto has the automatic attack and release. Sometimes you might not want automatic attack and release, and you want something you can really dial in. For that, maybe you could use a VCA. Like I say, each one of these compressors have their own characteristics, their own sound, and you'd want to use certain ones in certain situations. And also keep this in mind about VCA compressors. So, an opto compressor, you can't make an opto compressor react like an FET compressor. You can't make an FET compressor react like a opto compressor, but a VCA compressor, you can set a VCA compressor to act like an opto compressor. You can set it to act like an FET compressor. So in certain ways, the VCA is kind of that all-around player when it comes to compression, because you can set it to mimic what the other compression circuits do. A very good example of that is the Empirical Labs Distressor, which is a VCA compressor. However, you can set it to perform like an opto. You can set it to perform like an FET. So that's a really cool thing about VCA compressors. All right, let's take a look now at the different kinds of compressors. So any compressor that you use will be based off of one of the four designs I previously showed you. Now let's break it down to different kinds of compressors. So you've really got three different kinds. A multiband compressor, which is a compressor that lets you compress certain frequencies or certain range of frequencies. For example, if you want it to compress, say, from 100 to 200 hertz, you could do that with a multiband compressor. A de-esser, which is used to remove high-end, is more used as a high-frequency limiter where you can compress just the high end. It's mainly used to compress the S in a vocal sound, and it's also used on cymbals or anything with a harsh high end. You can use a de-esser for. A de-esser is technically a multiband compressor because you're compressing a certain frequency range with a de-esser. The last one is a tape machine. Now, a tape machine technically isn't a compressor. However, running a signal through analog tape, you will get a natural compression that happens. So, to me, I like to think of it as a form of compression because compression does happen when you run through analog tape. Let's take a look at these three kinds of compressors. So this is the McDSP MC404, which is their 4-band multi-band compressor. This also comes in a 303, which is the 3-band, and the 202, which is the 2-band. So, like I said, a multi-band compressor allows you to compress different bands, or in other words, different ranges. So you can see the way that this is set up right now. My low end goes from probably 20 hertz up to 100 hertz would be my first band. 100 hertz to 1K would be my second band. 1K to 10K would be my third band. And then 10K and up would be my fourth band. One thing I like to do with multiband compressors is not use them to compress, but use them to listen to different frequencies. So I'm going to play part of this vocal, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Because these are split into different bands, and this compressor has a solo feature, I can solo each range and listen to what's going on in each range. Let's loop this vocal here. And as it loops through, I'll solo through each band so you can hear it.
Boy, you're so risky. Yeah, why you kiss and touch on me? Check my review on the highway. Boy, you're so.
And these bands are adjustable. So one of my favorite things to do with multi-band compression is to use it on plosives, and I'll show an example of that later on. But I can find the frequency of a plosive, and for those who don't know, a plosive is the strong P sound that you get when you're too close to the mic. Sometimes I can find the frequency of that plosive, and I can use a multiband compressor to compress just that frequency range where the plosive is. So I can compress that and not affect the rest of the vocal. This is the Waves Renaissance de-esser. This is one of my favorite de-essers to use. It's very easy to use and simple and straightforward. Let's go over the controls on a de-esser. Well, let's back up a little bit. The de-esser is used to remove strong S sounds that you'll get sometimes in vocals. Let's take a listen to this vocal again, and you'll hear some of the strong S sounds coming through.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah. While you kiss and touch on me. Check my review on the high.
So we can deal with that with a de-esser. Now, let's go over the controls on it. The frequency allows you to change what frequency you want to start to de-ess at. So, for example, if I set this to 10K, everything above 10K would be compressed. The way you use a de-esser is you want to find the frequency where the high S is and work from there. So I'm going to set this to sidechain so we can hear it, and we'll play it and we'll find out where the S sound is. And before I do that, I want to say what you want to do is find the point where you're hearing a lot of the S and less of the vocal. So you can see down here 5K, I'm starting to hear more of the vocal. So I want to go back up and find where I'm hearing just the S's.
On the highway.
So I think that's good there. The next control is the type, and that switches between this mode, which would compress just the inside of that range. So I've got it set to about 9K. So this would compress a little bit on the left and the right of 9K, but then it'll still leave untouched going above 9K, whereas this mode is going to compress 9K and everything above, which is typically what I want to do when I'm de-essing. But I usually switch between these two modes and see which one sounds best. But typically, this is the one that I use. And you have a split mode, which splits the frequencies, because remember, everything to the left of 9K, everything below 9K we're not touching. We just want to compress above 9K. But you also have a wideband mode, which I honestly never use, but the wideband mode would compress everything once that high frequency above 9K is triggered. Moving over here, we have the range. This determines the maximum gain reduction that you get. So if I set this to negative 9 dB, it's going to compress no more than 9 dB, and I'll show you that. Let's turn the audio back on so we can hear it.
Boy, you're so risky.
Actually, let me clear the attenuation and now play it. Okay.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah.
So you can see it's not going to go any more than 9 dB on the gain reduction. Usually when I DS vocals, I have this a lot lower, so we're going to just take it to 20 for now. And then the threshold is going to determine when it's crossed at that frequency, when the de-esser kicks in and starts to compress. So the higher you set this, the more compression you'll get. And the higher you set this, the less compression you'll get. And the lower you set the threshold, the more compression you get. So let's quickly see if we can dial in and remove these strong S's from this vocal.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah. While you kiss and touch on me. Check my review on the highway.
That's already sounding better to me. Let's take it out and see what we had before.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah.
And with it.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah.
Actually, probably go a little bit more. Let's bring the range down to 24, and let's bring the threshold down to, let's go ahead down to 50. See what that sounds like.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah. While you kiss and touch on me.
Now, that's too much. And you know that you have too much de-essing going on when you can hear it. The whole goal, or normally the goal, I would say the goal of de-essing is to keep it sounding natural. So that's too much de-essing there. When it starts to sound too dark like that, you know that you've gone too far. And you'd back it back up. Let's just go back up to 20 again and listen to what we had.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah. While you kiss and touch on me. Check my review on the highway.
Okay, so I'm happy with that. So that is a de-esser. So let's take a look now at the analog channel from McDSP, which emulates a tape machine. You can see here that it shows gain reduction. So like I said, a tape machine technically isn't a compressor, but however, it's a form of compression because running a signal through tape will give you a natural, what we call tape compression. So I'm going to demonstrate that on this vocal. What I've done, just to kind of exaggerate it here, I've cranked up the input on the analog channel and I've backed down on the output. So by cranking the input, I'm feeding more signal in to the plug-in, and then I'm backing on the output. So you'll see when I hit play, you'll hear, or you'll see, well, and hear, the gain reduction going on because of this analog tape emulation. And what I'm going to do on the first loop, I'm going to take it out, so we'll hear it without it, and then when it loops, I'm going to turn it on, and you'll hear and see the compression that this adds.
Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah. While you kiss and touch on me. Check my review on the highway. Boy, you're so risky. Driving at this speed, yeah. While you kiss and touch on me. Check my review
can hear there that natural tape compression that you get. I'm going to play it now, and I'm going to take it in and out during the take so you can hear the immediate difference.
Boy, you're so risky, driving at this speed, yeah, while you kiss and touch on me. Check my review on the highway.
So you can see how tape adds a natural compression. This is the only plugin I've seen with a gain reduction on it that emulates tape. But there's no way to set the attack and release and the ratio and all that of it. Just the compression that's added with tape is just a natural on its own compression. So there's the three kinds of compressors. Looked at the multiband compressor, the de-esser, and analog tape. So the more you get into engineering, you will see these same battles popping up on the internet. You'll hear engineers arguing about these what's better, hardware or plugins. You'll hear people argue about what's better, PC or Mac. You'll hear people arguing about analog versus digital, and coming in the conversation now, you'll hear people arguing about analog summing and not analog summing. So, but in this section here, I'm going to focus on the hardware versus plugins, because as you get your plugin game up and you get more and more compressors, there's also you're also going to come to a point where you're looking at some hardware gear. And I just want to show the pros and the cons between hardware and plugins, because each of them have their pros and each of them have their cons. For each one of these bullet points I have here, you'll see one is a pro for one side, but it's a con for the other. So the first one, hardware is always going to be more expensive than plugins. The second one, hardware doesn't need to be updated. Meaning, if you go buy an analog compressor, you can use that compressor for the rest of your life. Nobody's going to go and change the input connections on the back and make you need different cables. So it doesn't need updating, and that's great. As far as plugins, sometimes they need to be updated. If you upgrade your operating system or the plugin updates to a new version, a lot of times they expect you to pay for that upgrade or that update. The next one is that hardware holds its resale value, meaning that you can resell it. The compressors that I own, if I wanted to, I can sell them. Whereas plugins, you can't really sell them. I remember once I was looking at selling an iLok license to someone, and it was going to cost me more than what I paid for the plugin. It just wasn't worth it. So that's one thing that really sucks about plugins, is once you purchase them, you're stuck with them. You can't really do anything with them, and you will get to a point where the plugins that you own, some of them you just won't use anymore, just because you've gotten newer or different plugins that you're used to using. There's no way I use all the plugins I have. Not that I have a whole lot, but I decided early on I wasn't going to be that guy with 100 different compressor plugins, 100 different EQ plugins on my computer, because I know that I'm not going to use all of them. So I don't have that many plugins, but I do have a good amount. But certain ones I don't really use anymore. I have some that I purchased that I've even forgotten that I've owned. I bought a new computer a few years ago, and I didn't install everything that I purchased. I installed what I used. The last one is that recall can be very difficult on hardware. It can really be a pain in the butt. And by recall, I mean if you, let's say you had your compressor at the studio, and then you brought it back home to your home studio, you want to use those same settings, you would have to turn and set the hardware exactly how you had it before. Um, some some hardware gear is easy to recall, and I make that a focus point when I buy gear. Every piece that I buy, I make sure that it's easy for me to recall it and get back to certain settings if I have to. But plugins have instant recallability, and once you save it, you reopen that session later, your same exact settings are right there. Sometimes you'll hear engineers talk about where if you're recording on a big recording console, and you come back 2 days later, it can take 30 minutes or even longer to reset every channel on the console back to the way you had it when you last used it. Because if you're in a studio, unless you've booked that studio out for a few days, a lot of times once you leave, someone else is coming in and using the studio. So that's a big difference between hardware and plugins there. A lot of people say, and I'm in this camp too, I still feel that hardware sounds better than the plugins, though the plugins are close. A lot of people want the sound of analog, but it's hard to deny the ease of plugins. So there's my take on the difference between those two. Let's move on to the next subject. Let's take a look at some advanced controls on a compressor now. Let's start with the knee. So this compressor in Studio One gives us the ability to adjust the knee. The knee is another way of adjusting how the compression reacts once it crosses the threshold, or even as it approaches the threshold. So normally on a compressor you may see hard knee, or you may see soft knee. This compressor gives us the ability to adjust everything in between a hard knee, which is all the way counterclockwise, to a soft knee, which is all the way clockwise. So if you notice, and as I change this, you can see the knee change. That's the knee changing there, and that blue dot is the threshold. So with a hard knee, as the signal approaches the threshold, as you can see, it's a very sharp curve, or maybe not even a curve, it's more of just a point. Once it hits that point, it's a very sharp transition into the compression, where, as you'll notice with a soft knee, it's a lot more smooth. So with a soft knee, the compression just eases into it. If you want a more less obvious and smooth compression to take place, you want to use a soft knee, because your signal will just kind of ease into the compression. Think of a knee as you turning a corner while driving. With a soft knee, you kind of ease into that corner and kind of take it slow. Whereas a hard knee would be you're hitting that corner hard in a very sharp turn. So a hard knee is a way to make your compression more aggressive and way more obvious if you want the compression heard. But if you want a gentler, softer, smooth compression, you want to go with a soft knee. Let's take a look at how the knee affects the sound. Let's take a look now at how the knee affects a signal. I'm going to switch up the compressors here, and now I'm showing the McDSP compressor bank, and it has an option for the knee. So with it at 0 to 0 is we'll just call it a medium knee, or a normal knee. If I go clockwise, I can make it a soft knee, and going counterclockwise will make it a hard knee, just like you saw with the Studio One compressor. So I've got a arpeggiated synth here that I'm going to loop, and I've got the compressor set up so we're getting a little bit of compression, and I'm going to adjust the knee so you can hear the difference between the soft knee and the hard knee. So I'm going to start with the normal knee, and then I'm going to give it a soft knee, and then I'm going to give it a hard knee. So pay attention to the gain reduction and watch how it reacts to the different knees. So you can see with the hard knee, I'm getting a lot more gain reduction. And that's why I was saying how the hard knee is more aggressive than what a soft knee is. So that's how a knee will affect a sound, the difference between a hard knee and a soft knee. Let's talk about the mix knob now. So a lot of compressors now have what's called a mix knob, and what the mix knob does is it allows you to blend between your uncompressed sound and your compressed sound. This is a good way if you want to, say, compress something heavily, and then you can blend back in some of the uncompressed sound to get some of the transients back. So as an example here, I've got a kick drum, and all the way at 0 would be considered dry. That's with no compression going on. So I'm going to play the kick drum now, which you're going to see gain reduction showing on the meter, but because the mix is set to 0%, we don't have any, you're not hearing any of the compressed signal. And then I'm going to set it to 100%, so now we're hearing 100% of the compressed signal. So notice how the compressed one, the kick drum, sounds like it's more in a room, and it's going to play it dry again, and listen to how you don't hear that room sound anymore with the dry kick drum. So if 0% is dry, sorry, if 0% is dry, of course 100% is then called wet, is considered with the effect. So if you hear that term dry, wet, dry means no effects and wet means with effects or processing. So what I'm going to do with the mix knob is I'm going to set this at 50%, which is going to give me half compressed signal and half uncompressed signal. So what you heard with the uncompressed signal is going to be blended with what you heard from the compressed signal. So you'll notice with it at 50%, now some of that room tone we were hearing with the compressed kick drum, we're getting now, as well as the same sound we had from the original uncompressed kick drum. So here it is with it at 50%. Now I'm going to play it. I'm going to start at 0. So we're going to play it dry, and then I'm going to move it to 50%, and then I'm going to go ahead and move it all the way to 100%, so you can hear the difference. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to play it at 0%, then 100%, and then I'll play it in the middle. So the mix knob is very handy for if you need to blend your compression. You can heavily compress something more than what you normally would, and then use the mix knob to back it down to maybe 75% or 60%, and really blend your dry and wet signal. Finally, let's talk about sidechain compression. Some compressors have what's called a sidechain feature. There's two types of side chains. There's an internal side chain and an external side chain. To demonstrate an internal side chain, I'm going to show it on this kick drum. So an internal side chain, what happens is, if I select filter, and you'll see the side chain switches to internal side chain filter, now I can take a low cut or high cut, adjust it, and what I'm doing is removing frequencies from the compressor's detection circuit. So for example, where I have this set at 200 Hertz, anything below 200 Hertz, the compressor will not see. So this is really handy for the place that I like to use it the most is when I'm compressing my whole mix. Low end is going to drive a compressor, and with an internal side chain, I can remove frequencies. I can remove those low frequencies from the compressor, and it won't see it, therefore the compressor won't react on it. But for now, let's take this out and let's play this kick drum. And what I'm going to do is, I've already got it set so we can get some compression. I'm going to increase the low cut filter. And so what it's going to do, we know, a kick drum is basically in the low frequencies. I'm going to remove the low frequencies from the detection circuit of the compressor, and you will notice that I'm getting less and less, and then finally none compression when I'm turning up the low cut filter. So notice I'm getting about 13 dB gain reduction. Let's increase the low cut now. So you can see at 625 hertz, I'm now getting about 1 dB of gain reduction. That's because everything in the low end I've now removed from the compressor detection, so it doesn't see that. So some compressors also have this feature called listen. So what this does, it may say sidechain listen. The one on here says listen filter. What this does is it allows me to hear exactly what the compressor is hearing. So I'm going to engage that, turn this back down. I'm going to play it again, and it's going to play with this full sound. And as I increase it, it's going to take out the low end, and I'm going to be able to hear just what the filter is seeing on this compressor. So at 154 hertz, this is what the compressor sees. This is what the compressor would be compressing. So like I said, the internal sidechain is a way to remove frequencies that you don't want the compressor to react on. It's really popular to remove low end from the compressor detection circuit. Let's take a look now at what a external sidechain does. So I'm going to turn that off. And it's back to no sidechain. So with an external sidechain, what happens is, if I put let's take this bass synth, for example. So if I just put a compressor on the bass, if I put a compressor on this bass synth, what's going to happen is, of course, the signal from that sound is going to go into the compressor, and that's going to determine my compression. With an external sidechain, I can tell the compressor, do not listen to the signal from this bass synth. I want you to listen to a signal from somewhere else. In this case, I'm going to use the kick drum to trigger compression on this bass synth. So up here, I'm going to select sidechain, and now you're going to see it says external sidechain. So now it's looking for an external source, meaning another track, to trigger the compression. I want it to be the kick drum, so I'm going to go to the kick drum, and you set this up with a send. I'm going to go down here to sidechains and select the compressor on that bass synth track, and I'm going to turn this send up to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to solo the bass synth, and I'm going to solo the kick drum. So notice how when the kick drum hits, it's going to trigger compression on this bass synth. So this is really good for, if you have your kick drum and your bass is taking up the same frequency range. What the kick drum is essentially doing is punching a hole in the bass, and it's allowing the kick drum to be heard clear when the kick drum is hitting. This is also a technique known as ducking. So when the kick drum hits, it's going to trigger compression on this bass synth. Now I'm going to play it, and I'm going to take the compressor in and out. So watch how with it in, how you can hear the kick drum, and then watch when I take it out, Watch how the kick drum kind of gets buried by this bass synth. So if you listen closely, you can hear as the kick drum hits, it's turning down the bass. That is a very popular use for external sidechain. So that's the difference between an internal sidechain and external sidechain. And remember, not all compressors have a sidechain feature, but if it does, this is an example of what you can do with it. Let's get into some compressor techniques now, compression techniques. And the first one we'll talk about is a very popular one called parallel compression. Parallel compression, also sometimes known as New York compression. The technique of parallel compression is a technique where you take a track or multiple tracks and send them to a bus channel, heavily compress that bus channel, and then blend that in with your tracks. So for example, this is sometimes done on vocals. I've heard of people doing it on entire mixes, but it's very, very popular to do on drums. So that's what I'm going to show it to you on. So I've got a kick drum, snare, hi-hat, and a clap. So I'll highlight these 4 tracks here. So what I'm doing is I have no compression on these 4 tracks. However, I'm sending a copy of each one of these tracks to a bus called drum comp, and you can see next to it here is that drum comp bus channel, and on it I have a Waves H comp, which is my favorite compressor to use for parallel compression. So I've got this set so we can get some heavy compression on it. And the way parallel compression works, if you listen to this bus channel on its own, it's not going to sound very good, but you don't want to use 100% of this compressed signal. What you want to do is blend it back in with the original signal, very similar to what you would do with the mix and the dry. This is kind of the old school way of setting it up by putting it on sends and sending it to a bus, because now with compressors having the mix feature that I showed you, you can do the same technique with the mix feature. You can heavily compress it and then use the mix knob to dial back in some of the uncompressed signal. I'm going to first mute this track, mute the bus track, so you won't hear the compressed drums. You'll just hear, for right now, just the 4 drum tracks. And then what I will do is I'll bring it in so you can hear it, and then I'll show you how we blend it. So this is just the drum tracks. Actually, there we go. And now I'm going to play it, and I'm going to add in the H comp so you can hear the parallel compression that's happening. It's considered parallel because I have the drum comp track parallel to the tracks that I'm compressing. You normally would set it up right next to the tracks that you're sending from. But now I'm going to add in the compress so we can hear what that sounds like. So you can see I have a negative 8.5 dB on the fader here. So the way you would typically set this up is once you get your heavy compression going, you want to bring this fader down all the way down to 0. And now I'm going to play the uncompressed drums, and then I'm going to slowly bring up this fader until I get a blend that I like between the uncompressed and this heavily compressed drums. you can see that with the compressed drums in there, it really hits harder, and that's why this is very popular to do on drums. And this is parallel compression. Let's take a look at the next technique, which I've already showed you sidechain compression, but now I'm going to show you something creative that you can do using sidechain compression. So this is a creative technique known as pumping that you will hear a lot in EDM music. I've got a bass line here. A kick and clap. And some hi-hats. And together it all sounds like this. Okay, so with this sidechain compression technique called pumping, what we're going to do is make the kick drum trigger the compression on the bass. And what it's going to do is it's going to totally change the sound and feel of this bass. So take a look at the compressor here. So I've got some compression set up. To do this, you want to use a fast attack, and you want to use a release that you make sure that the kick drum releases all the way before the next hit. And with this set up, let's take a listen to what we got now. And with it out. So this technique here, like it can really, it gives a good creative vibe to anything that you do it with. It works well with 4 on the floor kick drums and then a bass line, as you see here. Now another thing about pumping, pumping is not always, I'd say, considered a good thing. Sometimes if someone tells you that your compressor is pumping, it means that they can hear the compression. And in this term, pumping is a good thing because it's what we want. It's an effect. But if we were going for, just say, typical compression on this bass, and you could really hear the bass or really hear the compression pulling the bass down, that's a form of pumping that you may not want. So, keep in mind that pumping is all. I'm trying to say here, pumping is not always a good thing. You can use it as a creative tool, or most cases, if someone tells you that your compressor is pumping, it's not a good thing. It means they can hear the compression. But I'm going to play this back one more time, and I'm going to, the first loop I'm going to have it out, and the next loop I'm going to have it in, so you can hear again this effect that's being taken place with this form of sidechain compression. So let's recap and take a look at how we set this up. So first thing you want to have is a compressor that has a sidechain feature. You want to turn on your sidechain, and once you turn your sidechain on, go to your kick drum here, and under the send, select your sidechain, and select the track that you want to send the sidechain to. All right, and again, that's pumping. Let's take a look at the next technique, which is called serial compression. So this technique is known as serial compression. What serial compression is putting more than one compressor on one track. And the process is, or the thought process behind it is, instead of having, for example, one compressor at a 4-to-1 ratio, you do 2 compressors both at 2-to-1 ratio. I Me personally, I'm not a fan of serial compression. For me, when I set up, I can set up one compressor to do the job of what two or three would do on a track. So, I tried it. I'm not a fan of it. Uh, but I'm gonna still show you the technique because you may like it. Everybody's different. So I've got three compressors here set up the same way. They're all on the same track. Well, not set up the same way, but as far as the attack and release, that's all set the same. Threshold set the same. The two compressors you see on the left, both are at a 2-to-1 ratio, and the one on the right is at a 4-to-1 ratio. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take all the compressors out. I'm going to play this part of the vocal dry, no effects, no compression, and then I'm going to engage it, the first two compressors, the both that are doing 2-to-1. You'll see those working, and then when it loops a third time, I'm going to add in the one at 4-to-1. And you can listen to this, see if you hear a difference between the two. But this is the technique known as serial compression.
Been your girl so long, I hardly can remember why I fell in love with you at all. Every slam door, every no-show, never had your support.
Now the two doing 2-to-1.
Been your girl so long, I hardly can remember why I fell in love with you at all. Every slam door, every no-show, never had your support.
And the one with 4-to-1.
Been your girl so long, I hardly can remember why I fell in love with you at all. Every slam door, every no-show, never had your support.
Now, let's take a look at this. So the two on the left here, the first one got a negative 6.7 dB max gain reduction. So we'll just round that up to 7. Whereas the second one got 3.8 gain reduction. We'll round that up to 4. So we'll say just together that gave you 11 dB of gain reduction. So even though they're set the same, because one is before the other, the one after it is getting less gain reduction because the one before it is already reducing the signal. So the one on the right with the 4-to-1 ratio, it's doing a 8.2. We'll just round that down to 8. So it's getting about 3 dB less gain reduction there. Now there's another technique where you take the first compressor and set it for a fast attack. So let's speed this up to 6 milliseconds is fine. A fast attack. Let's give it a little bit slower release, and then let's do that the other way. On the first one, we'll give it a 20 millisecond attack. So give it a slower attack, and we'll give it a faster release. And then on the next one, you do the opposite. So we're going to give this one fast attack, and we'll go ahead and give it a slower release. We'll go to 300. Okay. And so to make sure that the second one is catching just a little bit more of just the peaks, I'm going to increase the threshold. And we'll take a listen to this now. So let me turn this compressor off. We'll do the same thing. I'm going to play it through dry, and then I'll add in these two compressors, and then I'll add in the one that's doing the 4-to-1.
Been your girl so long, I hardly can remember why I fell in love with you at all. Every slam door, every no-show, never had your support.
Now let's add the compression.
Been your girl so long, I hardly can remember why I fell in love with you at all. Every slam door, every no-show, never had your support.
And the 4-to-1 ratio one.
Been your girl so long, I hardly can remember why I fell in love with you at all. Every slam door, every no-show, never had your support.
Alright, so let's look at the gain reduction and see what we got on there. I will say with that one, the two compressors on the left, the compression was more audible to me. I could really hear it, the compression kicking in. So with the first two set the same, we had 11 dB gain reduction. So let's see. We got 6.5 on the first one and 3 even on the second one. So that's 9.5 dB gain reduction. So that's giving us just a touch more gain reduction than the one on the right. I said with it set that way, I could hear more gain reduction there. So that's serial compression. It's really just the technique of putting more than one compressor, more than one low ratio compressors on one track to make up a larger ratio. Again, I'm not a fan of it, but like I say, try it. You know, there's things that I like that people don't like, and there's things that people like that I don't like. As you know, for example, here the serial compression. So that's that technique. Let's move on to the next section. Let's take a look now at some classic compressors and how to use them. This is the Waves CLA-2A, which is an emulation of the LA-2A. This is a very famous opto compressor, very popular on vocals and bass. I'll put the bullet points of the opto compressor back up here. So remember that the opto compressor has an automatic attack and release, so you can't set it. A good thing about an opto compressor is there tends to just be two controls on them. You've got your gain on the left, which increases your output gain, and your peak reduction, which is how much gain reduction do you want. The knob on the left, or the switch on the left, I should say, switches between a compressor and a limiter, which basically switches between a lower ratio and a higher ratio. So an opto compressor is very easy to set because of the less controls, and with the Wave CLA-2A, a lot of times when you open it up, just the default settings are very good to start with, and sometimes you don't even have to change it when you put it on there. And also, as you see, opto compressors have a slower characteristic of their attack and release. So I'm going to play the lead vocal here, and pay attention to how slowly you can see the CLA-2A working here.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I've never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
So you can see we're getting up to 10 dB gain reduction, and think about the smooth character of an opto compressor. The vocal doesn't sound squashed at all. It still sounds natural. Opto compressors have a vibe of softening a signal to me. I'm going to play that same part, and I'm going to take the compressor out so you can hear what it sounds like without the compression.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I've never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
Okay, now I'm going to play it one more time with the compression. Actually, on this one, I'm going to bring the compressor in and out so you can actually hear an immediate difference of what it's doing. Just keep in mind the smooth character that the opto compressor adds. Opto compressors have a soft knee, so it eases into that compression, and then the slower attack and release really helps to keep things smooth while still letting some of the transients come through. I'm going to turn the compressor in and out on this pass.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
So, if you're the CLA2A also, if you can tell, it is giving the vocal a more in-your-face sound with the compression in. We got the gain reduction set to 50. I'm going to just increase it to 60. So we're going to get more gain reduction. Let's hear how a higher peak reduction or gain reduction on the CLA2A will treat this vocal. It should sound more squashed now, but the smooth characteristic of an opto compressor still might not squash it or make it sound as squashed. Let's take a listen and see what we got.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
This still sounds a little smooth. I'm hearing the compression more there. For me, that would be too much compression on this vocal. But you can see at CLA2A, very easy to set. Turn up your gain, turn up your peak reduction until you get the amount of gain reduction you want, and you pretty much got it set from there. The good thing about the CLA2A is it comes in a bundle called Wave CLA compressors. By learning this plugin, if you go to a studio that has an LA2A, it looks exactly like this plugin, so you'll be able to control it. As with the other classic compressors I'm going to show you, they're made to emulate that real studio gear that was used back in the day. So, and these are compressors that are in every studio. Every studio has an LA2A and an 1176, which we'll talk about next. But learning the plugins would help you learn how to use the gear if you get into a recording studio and have the chance to use that. Let's take a look now at the 1176. This is the Waves CLA76. Again, another compressor in the CLA compressors bundle. This is based off a very famous FET compressor, the 1176. Just like the LA2A, the 1176 is very popular on vocals and bass. However, it's very different from the opto compressor. You have control over the attack and release on the CLA76, and you also have no threshold that you would see on a typical compressor, because remember, with a FET, there's usually no threshold because the input and the threshold is tied together. So left to right, we'll go over the controls on it. On the left, you have the input. Now the input is tied to the threshold, so the more you increase the input, you're increasing the input of the signal into the compressor, but you're also lowering the threshold at the same time as you turn that up. The output is your makeup gain. Your attack and release, 1 is slow and 7 is fast. Remember, the FET compressor goes into microseconds with its attack time, so it has an extremely fast attack time. with the ratios, we have a 20 to 1, a 12 to 1, 8 to 1, 4 to 1, and the all simulates a mode called all buttons in, which is all of these ratios pushed in together. And then on the far right, we got our option for the metering, we've got our gain reduction, we can monitor the input, the output, and the red button turns the compressor off. There was many different revisions of the 1176, and Waves has also given us, I don't know which revision number this is. I want to say B or C, but I'm not sure. But this is the blue face 1176. It does sound a little different from the more popular black face that you'll see a lot. I believe the black one is revision D. But let's get into how this sounds. So in order to set the 1176, we want to increase the input until we get gain reduction. And the more you increase the input, you are increasing the gain of the signal into the compressor. And so generally, the more you bring up the input, the more you want to back down on the output, just depending on the signal. We got the same vocal that we heard with the LA2A here, and I've set the compressor. We've got at 12 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we've got pretty much a medium attack and release here. So let's play this and hear what we have with the CLA76 on the same vocal.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me.
So I'm not getting much gain reduction there, so what we're going to do, barely getting any, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the input. So let's increase it to 30.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
Okay, so I'm going to increase the attack time. Let's make it as fast as it can go, just so we can show off this microsecond attack time on this compressor. And I'm just going to come down on the output just a little bit here. And we'll stick with the 4-to-1 ratio. And let's hear that again.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
So with that extremely fast attack time, we're causing more gain reduction, and I can actually hear the gain reduction happening there. The CLA 76 and 1176, because of that extremely fast attack time, you can really squash transients, as you can hear as we did with that vocal. You can really squash transients with it because the attack is so fast. An FET compressor, the 1176, in my opinion, is a very aggressive compressor. So we're going to set, let's give it the slowest attack time we have now. We'll leave the release where it is for now. And let's hear with the slowest attack time, which actually the slowest attack time on an 1176 is still, to me, a fast attack time. But let's listen to the slow attack time and hear what it does to this vocal.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flower's beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no been no apple pie. So I
Okay, let's take a look at the blue version now. You can hear with that slow attack is letting the transients back through. Than with the really fast attack. Let's set the attack to 3 now, and let's flip over to the revision of the blue face, and let's hear it.
been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flowers' beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
So now let's flip between the blue face and the black face, and let's see if we can hear a difference. Listen really closely. In those 2 passes, I didn't really hear a difference. And even when I use this compressor, I will flip back between the 2 revisions. You know, sometimes I hear a difference, sometimes I don't. Just kind of off subject here. If you don't hear a difference in something, you know, don't be afraid to say you don't hear a difference, because to me, if you don't hear a difference, then it doesn't matter. For example, you know, which one sounds better, this blue one or the black one. If you don't hear a difference between the 2, then it doesn't matter which one you use. All right, back to the CLA 76. On this pass, I'm going to flip between the blue and the black, and we'll see if we can hear a difference between these 2 revisions.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flowers' beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
So it's really subtle, but to me, the blue face sounds more open, and the black face sounds more aggressive, and also seems to darken the vocal just a little bit to me. Now, let's take a look at the all-in. So this simulates the 20 to 1, 12 to 1, 8 to 1, and 4 to 1 ratios all pushed in at the same time. So this is going to give us a very high ratio. So let's take a listen to that. And on this pass, we'll go ahead and flip between the 2 and hear what they sound like on both revisions.
Been in your shadow too long. I forgot my flowers' beauty. Where's that strong woman in me gone? Look in the mirror, it's so much clearer. The sun's shining on me. There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie.
So there's an example of the all buttons in ratio on an 1176. Very weird compression behavior you get. As the story goes, an engineer accidentally bumped into one day and pushed all the ratio buttons in at the same time, and they were happy with the sound that they got, and so people started using it that way. But as I understand, the unit wasn't initially designed to work like that. Not a mode I've ever really used, but there is an option, and it's really the first thing people ask if somebody makes an 1176 clone of a compressor or plug-in. Everybody wants to know if it features the all buttons in mode. So if you hear about an 1176 and you hear someone mention all buttons in, that's what they're talking about, all the ratios pushed in. Now I want to go back over now the input and the output, because the input is tied to the threshold, and there's no threshold like a typical compressor. The 1176 can be very tricky to set and use. It took me a long time to really get used to using an 1176 just because of how the input works. So, like I said, as you increase the input, you're increasing the gain of the signal as well as increasing the gain of the signal into the compressor. And then your output is adjusting the output level after the compression happens. So I'm going to bypass the compression here. So we're just using the input and output still remains active, but the attack and release is deactivated when you bypass it. So we're just running we're going to run the vocal just through the compressor now, and I'm just going to show you how the input and output affects the signal. You can think of it like a mic pre. How if you have a mic pre with an input and an output, you can crank the gain on the input and then back down on the output, or you can have a low input and crank up the output. So let's take a look at that.
There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right.
So you can see with the input as well as output, you can turn the signal all the way off.
There's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe. I never been the one to give up, but this here just ain't right. This life with you ain't been no apple pie. So there's better days on the way. I'm stepping out the shadow of your ego, babe.
And also with the CLA 76, you can actually, if you hold shift and click, we can link these two parameters. So now when I move the input, it automatically adjusts the output at the same time, which is handy for the plug-in to have that feature. So with it bypassed, if you want to just get the color of the unit, you can bypass the compressor and just use the input and output, and that way your signal would just be passing through the compressor, and you would get the color of that compressor, the color of the transformer and all the circuitry, without actually applying any compression to the signal. So that's using the 1176. Let's now talk about VCA compressor, and we'll talk about one of my favorite compressors, which is the SSL bus compressor. So this is the SSL stereo bus compressor. This compressor is meant to go across your whole mix and compress your whole mix at once. So the SSL, if you're familiar with SSL, they make the big consoles that you see in recording studios, and the compressor that goes in the SSL console, this is a plug-in emulation of that. This plug-in is from SSL themselves, and in my opinion, this is the best SSL bus compressor plug-in that sounds the closest to the bus compressor in the console. I've mixed on an SSL many times, and this is the one that I find sounds the closest to the original. Let's get into the controls for it. Across the left side, we have our threshold. Below that, we have the attack, which is in milliseconds. And below that, we have the ratio. Now, the ratio only goes between 2, 4, and 20. So it's not variable where you can go between 2, 4, and 20, but you can choose 2, 4, or 20. Those are the only three selections that you have on the ratio. Normally for bus compression, you want to stick with the low ratio. I've sometimes gone as high as 4. I've never used 20 on the bus. Some people like this compressor on drums as well, but anytime I use it, I'm mostly using it across my whole mix. And on the right side, we've got our makeup gain, and we've got our release, which is in seconds. So this is important to pay attention to. The attack is in milliseconds, but the release is in seconds. So, with the attack, like here we've got 1 millisecond, 3 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds, and at the slowest attack, 30 milliseconds. On the fastest attack, we've got a 0.10 and a 0.30 milliseconds attack. Very fast attack time. On the release, we have 0.1 seconds, which is different from milliseconds. Easiest way to do the conversion is add a couple zeros behind the numbers. So 1.2 seconds on the release, which is a long release, that is going to translate to 1200 milliseconds. 0.6 is going to translate to 600 milliseconds, and so on. 0.3, 300 milliseconds. So the fastest release that we have on this compressor is 0.1, which is 100 milliseconds. And the very last option is auto, which is a auto release. So it's going to automatically determine what the release will be for you as the signal is passing through and is compressing. So I'm going to play this track here, and I'm going to engage the compressor, and let's hear what let's play it dry first with no effects, and then we'll engage the compressor and take a listen to how it compresses the whole mix.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold. Too many blinds in my business, and I ain't slow.
Okay, so now we're going to engage the compressor and listen to how the SSL compressor will, a term popularly used as glue. They call this mix glue. It's going to, when you compress your whole mix, you're bringing down some of the dynamic range of it, but you're also compressing the peaks. So where the loudest parts that are sticking out in your mix get turned down a little bit, and this has the effect of gluing the mix together. So let's take a listen to that.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold. Too many blinds in my business, and I ain't slow.
Okay, so if you listen closely, the SSL compressor, in my opinion, seems to kind of push the mid-range forward. You can hear the vocal standing out more with the compressor engaged. I'm going to play it back again, and now I'm going to flip between the two. I'm going to turn the compressor in and turn the compressor out.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold. Too many blinds in my business, and I ain't slow. New shoes on my ride, footwork so stupid. Kings out on the track, player tuck so foolish. Crazy but amazing how I seek that cheddar.
So you can hear the difference there of bringing the compressor in and out. Now, I've been using this at its fastest attack and fastest release time, which I don't generally do when I'm doing bus compression, but I did it because it's going to, with a really fast attack, we're going to get a little bit more gain reduction, and you can kind of tell the transients are getting squashed here. Now, the one thing that I don't like about the SSL bus compressor is that it doesn't have an internal sidechain, which I've talked about before in the previous section. Low end is going to drive the compression on your mix. So with a internal side chain, if I was able to have that on this compressor, I could filter out the low end, and therefore the low end would not affect the compression. Because there isn't an internal side chain on this compressor, what we have to do in order to preserve the transients and not squash them, we need to increase the attack. Look, normally when I use this, I use it at 10 milliseconds or even 30 milliseconds sometimes on the attack. Usually use an automatic release or sometimes a 600 millisecond release or 300. The release you really want to set depending on just the rhythm and tempo of the song. Like I've said, you want the release to come down back closer to 0 before the next hit. So I really set the release timed to the drums, how the drums go of the song. But I'm going to increase the attack here to 10 milliseconds. And as I play it, I'm going to flip through the attack and release and listen to the transients of the kick drum and pay attention to how they get compressed with these different attack times.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold. Too many blinds in my business, and I ain't slow. New shoes on my ride, footwork so stupid. Kings out on the track, player tuck so foolish. Crazy but amazing how I seek that cheddar. Want the world right now, but I know better. UPS right now, cause I box and deliver. They be real out there, but tuck much realer. I can feel the green stacks, that's so nice. 19.5, bruh, that's alright. 16 for 16, I'm finally here. Housework for housework is finally clear.
So as you can hear with the fast attack time, you can really hear the bass being pulled down by the compression there as well. So, in order to preserve your transients, if you want to keep the kick drum and the bass punchy in your mix, if you're using a bus compressor, you want to use a slower attack, preferably at least 10 milliseconds, because that's going to let the transient through. So that's the SSL bus compressor. One thing to keep in mind on this one is that your attack and release are in different, your attack is milliseconds and the release is seconds. You want to really keep that in mind. Actually, let's take a listen to the auto release, and we'll stick with the 10 milliseconds here and auto release, and let's take a listen to what that sounds like.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold.
So as you notice with the automatic release, you can see now that I'm clipping on my master channel here, and you never want to clip. So in the event of that, if you're starting to clip, if we bring down the threshold a little bit, it's going to cause a little bit more compression, but it should keep us from clipping now.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold. Too many blinds.
And we're still clipping just a little bit, and we just bring the threshold down a little bit more. We should be good. But yeah, if you're starting to clip on your master bus, you can bring down the threshold so you can get a little bit more compression. We'll go more over using mixed bus compression in a later section here. But that's the SSL bus compressor, and that's how you use it. Very popular to use across your mixed bus and really all genres of music that I deal with. The SSL bus compressor is very popular to use. Also, I just want to point out, besides the version that SSL makes, Waves also makes one. We'll show that here. So this is the Waves version. It's a emulation of the SSL bus compressor, but it is of a different console. This is based off the SSL G. So again, let's set this up and let's give an example of this one as well. Let's go back with our 10 millisecond attack, and we'll go to the auto release. We'll bring our threshold down some. All right, let's take a listen to the SSL version, or the Waves version of the SSL bus compressor.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up.
I'm going to increase the threshold. That's getting a lot of gain reduction. When you're doing mixed bus compression, you typically don't want no more than a few dB, and by a few dB, I really don't let mine go past 4 dB of gain reduction, because really going past 4 and doing a lot of compression on the mixed bus, you'll end up squashing your whole mix, and you really don't want to do that. That's not the purpose of using bus compression. So let's increase our threshold, and let's see what we got now.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm finally here. Shake it up, push it out. Finally clear, package up, push it in. Raw and pure, respect me now, bruh, this my year. Can't answer my cell phone cause I'm cooking right now. Shake it up in the kitchen and I'm pushing it out. Hit the block, clock in, I got money to make. Back in by 10, I got orders to bake. Catch a shower, jump fresh, put y'all on hold. Too many flies in my business, and I ain't slow. New shoes on my ride, footwork so stupid. Kings out on the track, player tuck so foolish. Crazy but amazing how I seek that cheddar. Want the world right now, but I know better.
So even there with the Waves version, you can still hear the same effect of the vocal being pushed a little bit more in your face when I engage it than from when I take it out. So that's, you know, two popular versions of the SSL bus compressor. Let's move on now to the VariMu. This is the VBC, which stands for Virtual Bus Compression, FG-Mu, which is an emulation of a VariMu, which is based off of a Fairchild compressor. I'm not familiar with I've never used a Fairchild compressor, so I don't know how many of these features on here, how many of the extra features on here are actually on the original piece of hardware. For example, we have stereo and mid-side. I'm not sure if that's on the original unit, but however, this is an emulation of a Fairchild compressor. So with VariMu, there's no ratio. So you take a look at each one of these compression circuits, and while each of them are unique, it seems like we lose a basic feature on each one. Where in opto you don't have control over attack and release. The FET you don't have a threshold, and now the VariMu we don't have a ratio. The ratio, however, is tied into how much compression is done. So the compression changes as the ratio changes as the compression changes. The more compression you get, the higher your ratio is. So because VariMus are typically used in mastering, we've got this set up here in a mastering situation. I'm going to play this track, and actually before we play it, so let's finish going through the controls on it. So the first knob you have here, so both of these top and bottom are the same because we're using as mastering. This is a stereo compressor. So these first two set of controls, what I turn on one is going to turn on the bottom one because they're stereo linked. If we needed to unlink them, we do have the option of unlinking them here. So then when I move the top one, the bottom one doesn't move. But if you're using this for mastering, you're going to always want this stereo link on. So the middle knob is the threshold. So whereas the FET compressor, we didn't have an option for the threshold. We have that now with the VariMu. The last one is the makeup gain. And then we have control over the attack and release. And we have a high-pass filter, which is the internal side chain of the compressor. And then on the far end, we have a mix knob, which is, I've went over the mix knob, how it blends between the compressed and uncompressed signal. Typically with mastering, you only want a few dB compression. So I'm going to play this track, and I'm going to adjust the threshold until we get just a few dB of gain reduction. I'm going to pay attention to my level meter here as well and see where I'm peaking at. Because this song has not been mastered already, it's going to be below 0. So I'm going to use the makeup gain to get the track up to 0. I'm going to also use the input to drive more color and character into the song, and also drive more signal into the compressor. The input works like an FET input, where you increase the input, you're increasing the gain. So I'm going to increase the gain of that as well, because the VariMu does have tubes in it. So the emulation of this compressor was modeled after tube and getting tube character. The way to get more of that out of the compressor is to drive the input. All right, let's go.
So who's the hottest DJ right now?
The hottest DJ gotta be DJ Groove Kid. Act like you know.
Leaning like a lion. Rest in peace, my double cup. Damn, my is too big, and I think that was double stuff. Number one to the paper chase. You the runner-ups. THP gon' do it B.I.G. like we notorious. Shout out to my DJ, that big groove kid. With attitude, easy E, ruthless. Heater all up in your mouth, stick your gums, toothpick. Damn, I cannot cop my coupe because my is too thick. Blowing on that dodo, riding with that.
Okay, I'm going to adjust now the attack and release. I'm starting to clip, so I'm going to bring my output down just a little bit instead of bringing it up to get to 0. Let's just bring it down 2 dB. And the attack and release, so 0 is fast and 5 is slow. So I'm going to use, let's give it a little slower attack. And on the release, let's give it a quicker release. All right, let's hear what we have.
So who's the hottest DJ right now?
The hottest DJ gotta be DJ Groove Kid. Act like you knew.
Leaning like a lion. Rest in peace, my double cup. Damn, my is too big, and I think that was double stuff. Number one to the paper chase. You the runner-ups. THP gon' do it B.I.G. like we notorious. Shout out to my DJ, that big groove kid. With attitude, easy E, ruthless. Heater all up in your mouth, stick your gums, toothpick. Damn, I cannot cop my coupe because my is too thick. Blowing on.
Actually, with those attack and release settings, I'm now well below 0. So I'm going to take my output and bring it back up just a little bit. And on this pass now, I'm going to take the compressor in and out so you can hear the difference of what it's doing. I'm going to just add a touch of more input gain. So I'm going to bypass the compressor in and out on this pass, and we can hear what the Verimute compressor is doing to this song.
So who's the hottest DJ right now?
The hottest DJ gotta be DJ Groove Kid. Act like you knew.
Leaning like a lion. Rest in peace, my double cup. Damn, my is too big, and I think that was double stuff. Number one to the paper chase. You the runner-ups. THP gon' do it B.I.G. like we notorious. Shout out to my DJ, that big groove kid. With attitude, easy E, ruthless. Heater all up in your mouth, stick your gums, toothpick. Damn, I cannot cop my coupe because my is too thick. Blowing on that dodo, riding with that 4-0. I pledge allegiance to H-Block, patriot like Ocho. Get money's all I know. Catch you.
Okay, so you can hear how the Verimute is adding some more character. It's starting to sound a little dark and dull when I take it out. So I'm really liking the character that the Verimute is able to add to this song. Also, let's take a look at the internal sidechain here. I'm going to, let's turn this up to, let's just do 150. So now anything below 150 will not be seen by the compressor and it won't react on it. This will allow me to use a faster attack time. Well, we're going to let's increase the, let's give us a faster attack, and let's see what we got now with the high pass filter turned on.
So who's the hottest DJ right now?
The hottest DJ gotta be DJ Groove Kid. Act like you knew.
Leaning like a lion. Rest in peace, my double cup. Damn, my is too big, and I think that was double stuff. Number one to the paper chase. You the runner-ups. THP gon' do it B.I.G. like we notorious. Shout out to my DJ, that big groove kid. With attitude, easy E, ruthless. Heater all up in your mouth, stick your gums, toothpick. Damn, I cannot cop my coupe because my is too thick. Blowing on that dodo, riding with that 4-0. I pledge allegiance to H-Block, patriot like Ocho. Get money's all I know. Catch you with that quick scope. The world's on my shoulders. Under pressure, I won't fold. Cause I don't think I am the one you want no problem with. Mugging with your team, I kill your dogs like Michael Vick. Stupid with the flows, I am confident. Me and Groove Kid, y'all.
Okay, so that's the difference between the Verimute in and out there with those settings. Let's actually move to the hook, and let's hear how it sounds on the hook.
Cause I don't think I fold. With the flows, I am confident. Me and Groove Kid, y'all look out the steady bouncing in the mix.
Groove Kid.
And me constantly playing hits.
Groove Kid.
Who got them girls dropping low?
Groove
My
Kid.
crunk on the floor.
Yeah, DJ
Who
Groove
got me
Kid.
bouncing in the mix?
So as you can hear, the Very adds a very nice color and character and works well for this song. These are very rare compressors and very old compressors as well. So if you're in a recording studio and you have a chance to use one, definitely give it a try now that you know how to use one now. All right, let's move on to the next section. Choosing the right compressor. So once you're engineering for a while, you'll take a look at your plugin list and notice that you have a lot of compressors, or more than a few. The longer you stay in engineering, the more likely you are to acquire more gear, more plugins, and you can end up with quite a bit of compressors. So let's take a look at choosing the right compressor. How do you choose the right compressor for a particular task? You want to ask yourself some questions. First one is, do I want something colorful or clean? Do you want something transparent or with character? You've got to think about this before you go and grab a compressor because, like I said, all compressors are different. They all react differently and they all sound different. So you have to decide which side are you on for what you want to compress. Do you want something colorful or do you want something clean? Something else you need to ask yourself is, how much control do I need? As we see, some compressors have control over the attack and release and some don't. So the compressor that you want to reach for, depending on what you want to compress, you want to already have in mind how much control do you need, because you need to have an idea of how you want to compress something before you even reach for a compressor. And the last one is, what speed will I need? So, for example, like we looked at, the 1176 has a very fast attack time, and where the LA2A has a slower attack time. If you're compressing something and you need a really fast attack, you're not going to go get an LA2A. So again, this is something else that you need to think about before you reach for a compressor. So these are 3 questions to help you get headed in the direction of which compressor do you choose. So once you've answered these questions, then you can look at your plugin list or look at the compressors that you have, as far as hardware, if you have any, and decide which one will be the best to use on the particular track that you're going to compress. So once you've chosen the right compressor or compressor that you think would be best for a specific job, now of course we have to set the compressor. I'm going to share with you a method that I came up with that really helped me when I was learning compression and learning how to set a compressor. And I call that the who or what, where, when, and how of compression. The first thing is the who or what. This is the artist or instrument. Before you start setting a compressor, you need to take a step back and take a look at who or what you're compressing, and try to get an idea of how you want this to sound once you're done compressing it, and also take into account how it's normally done. You want to make sure that your compression lines up and sounds as close to natural as this instrument or person would be. And the next one is the where. Where is going to equal your threshold on the compressor. So, like we said, setting the threshold determines when, or once it's crossed, that the compression is going to take place. It is typically the first thing you want to set on a compressor is the threshold, and that is your where. Where do you want this compression to start at? The next one is when. So the when is going to equal to the attack and release. And the last one is how, and that's your ratio. Your ratio determines how the signal is going to get compressed. So looking at these 3, where, when, and how, you will realize that we have our 4 main basic controls on a compressor: your threshold, attack, release, and ratio. So as you go to set your compressor, if you keep this in mind, where, when, and how, think about that as it pertains to what you're compressing, and it will really help you in setting the compressor. Let's take a compressor now and apply this method to setting a compressor. So let's take the who or what, where, when, and how of compression and apply that to compressing this vocal. So we're going to start with the who or what. So we know in our mind that this is a vocal, and we're going to listen to it and think about how we want to compress it. I'm going to demonstrate this on a vocal because normally a vocal is the hardest thing to grasp compression on. So I'm going to play the vocal, we're going to listen to it, and let's listen to what we hear and decide how we want to use compression on this.
Keep trying to fight what the heart wants, kicking and screaming inside. You know things just ain't right. Pretend to be happy, cover the hurt, in need of peace of mind, or run away and hide. No.
Okay, so we got some parts in this dynamic vocal that's really loud. I know immediately that's what I'm going to want to tame with the compressor. We can even see that my clip indicator went off because this was so loud that it went above 0. So using compression, we want to make sure that it doesn't go over 0. And for this, I just want to use general compression and turn down the loud parts. So once it gets too loud, the compressor is going to kick in and turn it down. So I first want to decide where. So where do I want my threshold to be before compression starts? So let's play it again. I'm going to watch my input meter and see where it gets loud, so I'll know where to set my threshold.
Keep trying to fight what the heart wants, kicking and screaming inside. You know things just ain't right. Pretend to be happy, cover the hurt, in need of peace of mind, or run away and hide. No.
So this third line down, 1, 2, 3 here, that is where I want to set my threshold, because I noticed that when it was getting really loud, those loud parts were going over this mark. So let's bring our threshold down to here. And so it looks like that's a negative 12 dB on the threshold. Next, I want to determine when. So when do I want the compression to happen? Generally for vocals, I like to start with a 10 millisecond attack time. So I'm going to start there. And for a release, I'm just going to bring this up to, let's just say 200 for now. So I know with this I want a medium release. I don't want it to let go of the compression too quickly because then it won't sound even and it's going to still be really loud. I want it to ease off the compression as it releases those loud parts. And as far as the attack, 10 milliseconds is going to be, once it crosses the threshold, 10 milliseconds is going to start to compress. We'll start with 10 milliseconds and see what that sounds like. And the last one is how. How do I want this to compress when it goes above the threshold? I'm gonna start this at just a gentle 2-to-1 ratio, and we'll see what we have from there. So let's turn on the compressor and let's take a listen and see what we have now.
Keep trying to fight what the heart wants, kicking and screaming inside. You know things just ain't right. Pretend to be happy, cover the hurt, in need of peace of mind, or run away and hide. No.
So we're getting the compression that I want. I think my release is too fast, and what I'm looking at in the release is I want the release to come all the way back to 0 before she starts to sing again. and that's happening just a little too quickly for me. So I'm going to speed this up to 300. As far as the attack, that's fine to me. I'm going to move the ratio up a little bit. Let's try a 3-to-1. And so we saw that I got a negative 7 dB gain reduction. We'll see what I get with this 3-to-1 ratio now. It should compress just a little bit harder.
Keep trying to fight what the heart wants, kicking and screaming inside. You know things just ain't right. Pretend to be happy, cover the hurt, in need of peace of mind, or run away and hide. No.
So that sounds good to me. Let's take the compressor out again and listen to the difference.
Keep trying to fight what the heart wants, kicking and screaming inside. You know things just ain't right. Pretend to be happy, cover the hurt, in need of peace of mind, or run away and hide. No.
And with the compression,
Keep trying to fight what the heart wants, kicking and screaming inside. You know things just ain't right. Pretend to be happy, cover the hurt, in need of peace of mind, or run away and hide. No.
so we're getting a really smooth and transparent compression there. Nothing is sounding too squashed, and I think that is set good for this vocal. So you can see setting a compressor using the who or what, where, when, and how of compression makes setting the compressor easy. I'm going to make what you see here in the bottom left now, which is the slide. I'm going to make that a downloadable PDF from the course, so you can download that and keep it and use it when you're setting a compressor, and it should help you set a compressor more easy when you think of this and go through this method as you're setting your compressor.
Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping, they are dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odor. On the grind, trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa, might miss out, I might miss out. All over the city, can't sit down. Can't wait to win, so get straight to business. Studio flow, lyrical fitness, God gifted to kick the ballistics. Protect yourself, don't be statistics. Ain't for no reason. They see this upper echelon, finishing up my third season. You smell the seasoning, extra sauce in the building. Did I forget to mention it? Yeah, that is.
So as you can hear, we have some really strong S's there in that vocal. Now I'm going to engage the de-esser and listen to how smooth the S's get now that they're being de-essed.
Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping, they are dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors. On the grind, trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa, might miss out, I might miss out. All over the city, can't sit down. Can't wait to win, so get straight to business. Studio flow, lyrical fitness, God gifted to kick the ballistics. Protect yourself, don't be statistics. Ain't for no reason. They see this upper echelon, finishing up my third season. You smell the seasoning, extra sauce in the building. Did I forget to mention it? Yeah, that is.
So you can see with the de-esser, it really tames those S's. I wanted to go back over de-essing because I want to show you what a over de-essed vocal sounds like. There is a point that you can cross with de-essing where the vocal will start to sound dark and will start to sound a little muffled because you're removing a lot of the high frequencies with the de-esser. So I'm going to solo the vocal, and I'm going to drop the threshold really low, and also bring down the range. Now take a listen to this vocal, and this is a sign of over de-essing. You'll hear it, like I said, begin to sound muffled, and it also sound dark because you're removing those high frequencies.
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping day or dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors on the grind trying to meet the quota.
And with it bypassed,
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping day or dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors.
now I'm going to bring it in and out so you can hear the immediate difference. Starting with it out.
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping day or dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors on the grind trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa, might miss out, I might miss out. All over the city, can't sit down. Can't wait to win, to get straight to business. Studio flow, lyrical fitness.
As you can see, with a lot of compression there on the high end, you really change the vocal, and that's what you want to avoid when you're using a de-esser. So that is what too much de-essing sounds like. I want to also go over the other type, and that is this split band here. So with this mode, it only compresses in between these frequencies, where with this mode it compresses everything in the high frequencies. So let's take a listen to it in this mode, and let's hear how that sounds. Let's go back to our original settings here.
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping day or dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors on the grind trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa, might miss out, I might miss out. All over the city, can't sit down.
This is doing a good job, but I think I like this band, or this type, better. So now let's listen to this vocal, and let's switch back and forth between these two types.
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping day or dark. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors on the grind trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa, might miss out, I might miss out. All over the city, can't sit down. Can't wait to win, to get straight to business. Studio flow, lyrical fitness, God gifted to kick the ballistics.
So you can hear as I'm switching those types. This type here is getting louder, and that's because it's compressing less. It's just compressing this range of frequency here in the middle, where this one is compressing everything. It's almost like where your high shelf on the EQ boosts everything all the way down the line. It's the same way with the de-esser in this mode, because it de-esses and compresses everything up the line above that frequency. So that's de-essing there. You know, again, you want to be careful not to overdo it, because you can make your vocal sound dark, and you can make it sound a little muffled and lose the presence of the vocal when you're compressing a lot of that high end with a de-esser. Now in some cases you'll de-ess harder than what you really want to, and a way that you can get around losing a lot of the high frequencies and still keeping a natural sounding vocal with a lot of de-essing is by using an EQ to boost a little bit above the frequency that you're de-essing. So let's set this to get a little bit more aggressive de-essing. And I've got a EQ here, and at about 10K I'm adding 2 dB. Now remember, on the de-esser, we're de-essing everything above 8K, so we're compressing everything above 8K. So you notice that what I'm boosting on the EQ is above 8K. It's above what we're de-essing. So I'm going to take the EQ in and out, and I'm going to start with it out, and listen how we've got a over de-essed vocal, and then we're adding a little bit back in with the EQ.
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping, they a dog. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors. On the grind, trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa.
And with the EQ in,
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping, they a dog. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors. On the grind, trying to meet the quota.
so it's subtle, but we're getting some clarity back and a little more presence just by adding just a couple dB above where we're de-essing. Now I'm going to play it and I'm going to take the EQ in and out so we can hear the immediate difference, starting with it out.
Yeah. Now we them guys from their boulevard, rapping and trapping, they a dog. You know what it is, my face card. When I'm on the scene, things tend to spark, and you start smelling exotic odors. On the grind, trying to meet the quota. Need a few more stacks over. Can't win if I'm on the sofa, might miss out, I might miss out. All over the city, can't sit down. Can't wait to win, so get straight to business. Studio flow, lyrical fitness.
So you can see by adding just a couple dB, let's say we're getting some clarity, we're getting just a little bit of presence back. When doing this, you don't want to add too much on the high end because you'll be boosting frequencies that's causing that sibilance in the first place, and you'll be right back where you started if you boost too much of this high end. So this is just something to do if you end up having to de-ess a vocal harder than what you really want to, but when you back off of it, you still just can't get it right. Some engineers like to take their whole mix and send that through a compressor of their stereo bus. This is known as mixed bus compression. Mixed bus compression isn't for everyone. Some engineers like to do it, some don't. I like to use mixed bus compression, and I'm going to show you some examples of that as well as how to set a compressor to compress your whole mix. So you want to start by putting a compressor on your master channel, because all of your tracks run through your master fader or your master channel, and that's where you put your compressor. So the first one I want to show you is a free compressor, which is a really good bus compressor. You know, some compressors are designed specifically for this task, and a lot of them that you'll see will mimic the SSL compressor that I showed you earlier in the course. This is a compressor called DCAM Free Comp from FXpansion. You can go to their website, fxpansion.com, and download this for free. Now let's take a look at the controls. You've got attack, which you'll notice is the same attack times as the SSL compressor. Like I said, a lot of bus compressors or mixed bus compressors will mimic the controls and settings from an SSL compressor. And ratio, the same times as the SSL, or same ratios as the SSL. And we've got threshold to makeup gain. Now, this compressor does not have a release. It has an automatic release. But your goal with mixed bus compression, you'll hear a term, glue, gluing your mix. It's going to compress everything in the mix, and you want to do this very slightly. You don't want to be heavy-handed with your compression and squash your whole mix. You want to compress it just a little bit. So, normally on this I go for 3 or 4 dB max gain reduction when I'm compressing my whole mix. So I'm going to, I don't have the compressor on now, so we're going to play just the end of this song here, and then we'll turn on the compressor and listen to how it compresses the whole mix.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
Okay, so now let's turn on the compressor, and now let's listen to it. You'll notice a slight gain reduction, which is what we want on mixed bus compression. It's going to compress it slightly. We're going to reduce the gain slightly, and you notice how everything sounds more together now, which is the term glue. that you'll hear used most often for bus compressors. Let's take a listen to this now.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
Now, in case you didn't hear a difference there, now I'm going to play it, and I'm going to take the compressor in and out so you can hear the immediate difference.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
So you can hear with the compressor engaged, you notice that the hook, the singing vocals there, sound to come more together and a little more under control now with the mix bus compression. Well, let's take a closer look at the settings that I'm using. So I normally use a 10 millisecond attack time on my mix bus compression, and the reason being I want to let some of the transients from the drums pass. With a too quick attack time, you're going to squash the transients and you can kill the punch in the drums on your mix bus. So let's take this all the way to 0.1 milliseconds attack, and we'll turn it off, and then as it starts to play I will engage it and watch. We're also going to get more gain reduction because the attack is quicker, but notice how we lose punch in the drums, and we're going to get a lot more compression.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
So with a really fast attack time, on your mix bus, you can kill the transients, or you will kill the transients in the mix. So that's why a lot of times I stick with at least a 10 or 30 millisecond attack time. Let's take a look at another compressor. Now this is the SSL Duende bus compressor, which is modeled off of one of their console bus compressors. And we've got the same settings here: 10 millisecond attack time. I've got a 300 millisecond release and a 2-to-1 ratio. Let's bypass this, and as it plays, I will engage it and we'll hear what this compressor sounds like.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
So the SSL Duende compressor, this tends to keep things more in your face, in my opinion, versus the free compressor. Let's take a look at the next compressor, which is Stevens Slate VBC. This is the FG Gray, which again is based off the SSL compressor. We have the same attack times. We've got 0.1, 0.3, 1 millisecond, 3 milliseconds, 10, and 30, which is the same times as the free one, the same time as the SSL one. So like I said, a lot of these bus compressors will emulate the SSL compressor. Same settings: 10 millisecond We've got on this one, we've got a 600 millisecond release time. The difference on this compressor that the SSL does not have is a high pass filter. What this does is, with me having this set at 120 hertz, anything below 120 hertz the compressor will not see. It's only going to compress above 120 hertz. The reason you would want to do this is because low end is what the compressor will see first, and that's what it's going to react to first. By removing the low end from the compression detector circuit, it leaves your low end open and it won't be compressed. So we're going to get the full hit of your low end without compressing it, and everything above that will be compressed. So let's take a listen to the FG Gray.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
With the low end being removed there, this one sounds really transparent. We're not hearing an apparent compression like we do with the other two compressors. So, if your low end is hitting too hard and driving too much compression, you can use that high pass filter feature to remove your low end from the compression. It's a really good feature to have if you're getting or using a bus compressor. And lastly, we're going to take a look at the Studio One compressor. This is the compressor that comes with Studio One. So if you don't have a bus compressor, you can still, if you have a compressor that has your 4 basic controls, threshold, ratio, attack, and release, you can set that to become a mixed bus compressor. You don't have to have one specifically designed for a mixed bus in order to do mixed bus compression. So let's turn on this compressor and take a look at what we're doing here. I have the same settings as the SSL on this compressor. I have a 2-to-1 ratio. I have a 10 millisecond attack, 300 millisecond release. So let's take a listen to this one. Let's turn it off, and as it starts to play, I will engage it so we can hear the compression.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
Very nice. We can hear our little bit of compression going on there when that's engaged. Now this compressor has a high pass filter, so let's put the same settings here as we did with the Slate. Let's give it 120, and let's take a listen to this now with 120 hertz and below removed from the compression.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
So interesting enough, we didn't get any compression at all when I engaged the compressor. So what that tells us is we need to drop our threshold a little bit. So it's at -12. I'm just going to bring it down to -15, and let's run that back and see what we got now.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me.
Alright, still not getting any compression. Actually, I don't know why this high cut is set to 290 hertz. Maybe that's why. Let's turn that off, and now let's see what we got.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me.
So now we're getting about 5 dB of gain reduction, which is just a little bit more than what I typically go for on mixed bus. So I'm gonna bring the threshold back up. Let's just do -13 on the threshold. Okay, let's hear what we have now.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
Okay, so that was really nice. So we're moving 120 hertz. We still got the full hit of our low end. We still could hear a little bit of compression there. So, you know, you don't have to use mixed bus compression. Like I said, some people like it and some people don't. Like I said, I like it. I'm a fan of mixed bus compression. I'm a fan of the SSL bus compressors. It's my favorite compressor to use when I'm compressing my whole mix. So again, just to recap, things that you want to avoid when doing mixed bus compression is going too far and compressing it too much. Just an idea of what that sounds like. Let's get our SSL compressor back up, and we got a threshold of 16. I'm going to drop this down into 8, and listen to how much compression we get now.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me.
It's a lot of compression for the mixed bus, and let's be a little more dramatic. Let's take the threshold down to 0 and see how much compression we get now.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me.
So you can hear the more compression that we get, the more squashed the mix starts to sound, and it can start to sound lifeless as well, because we're removing all the dynamics from it with a lot of mixed bus compression. So, you know, remember that you want to keep it gentle when you're doing mixed bus compression. And let's talk about the release setting on bus compressors. So you have an option of a very fast release, which is 100 milliseconds, and you have all the way up to an automatic release. So what the automatic release does is the compressor is going to take a listen to the mix itself, and it's going to determine what it thinks is the best release time for it. I used to leave mine set on automatic for a long time, and then I started, you know, experimenting with the different release settings, and I've started using my own now versus the automatic release setting. And let's take a listen to the release settings with a very fast release up to a 1.2 second release and automatic release, and let's listen to the differences that the release has on the compressor. Let's return this back to 16 dB. Alright, here we go.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
You can see with the really fast release, we're getting more compression than with the automatic. Now let's take a listen one more time, and let's add this 1.2 second release and hear what it sounds like.
Anything you want, best believe it's yours. Don't insult me, baby, you ain't gotta ask for it.
Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, cause it's all on me. Whatever you want, whatever you need, baby, I got it, cause it's all on me. Tonight's your night, do as you please. Money ain't a thing, it's all on me.
So the reason we're getting a lot more compression with slower releases is because once the compression happens and it's slowly releasing the compression, the compressor is coming back down again. It's not releasing quick enough all the way back to zero before the compression happens again, which with mixed bus compression, you're not really going to go back to zero because there's no stoppage in sound. The sound just keeps going. So keep that in mind. As where I've shown you with setting the compressor for other instruments or sounds, you want the compressor to go back to zero before the next transient comes. With mixed bus compression, that won't happen because there's always something playing going on in the mix that's going to trigger that compression. So keep that in mind. But there's a look at different release settings on mixed bus compression. And generally 300 to 600 is where I like to keep it. Sometimes automatic sounds fine and I'll set it there. Like I said, I used to just leave it set it automatic. It was just kind of a habit until I started experimenting more with the release settings on there. So when you use mixed bus compression, listen to the different releases and you want to find one that best fits your song. You want to get the compressor to move in rhythm with the song, and a lot of times the rhythm is the drum section, so you want that compression to go based off your rhythm and drums. So as the drums are going, you want the compression to move, to compress and release with the rhythm of the drums, and you do that by timing your release correctly. A frequently asked question about mix bus compression is, when do you add the compressor to your mix bus? Do you do it at the beginning of the mix? Do you wait till you're almost finished? Do you complete your whole mix and then put it on at the end? My answer to that is that you can do it whichever way you like to. Some people like to put it on at the very beginning and mix into the compressor. Me, I like to get my mix almost done and then I like to add it. Or sometimes I will set it at a very high threshold just to make sure that I'm not clipping as I mix, and then I will readjust it later. So there's different approaches to using mixed bus compression. Like I said, that's the way that I like to do it. Some people complete their whole mix and then put it on at the end. I'm not a fan of that, and reason being, when you add the compressor at the very end of your mix, once you have everything sounding the best that you feel that you can make it sound, and then you add the compressor onto it, things can start to sound different sometimes because you've been listening to a uncompressed mix, and then you put a compressor on at the very end, and it can change the balance of some instruments or sounds that you have going on in the mix. So that's why I like to get maybe 25-40% done with my mix and then add the compressor on. And remember, the first thing I went over in choosing the right compressor is, do you want something clean or colorful? The same thing applies to mixed bus compression. Some mixed bus compressors are very clean and they won't add any color or character to your mix, and some do add character. One that adds character, for example, is the API 2500. Waves makes a plugin modeled off the API 2500. That is a stereo bus compressor that will add character and is known for adding character. Most people like their mixed bus compressors to be clean and not really add character to the mix. So that's a choice that you have to make when you're choosing a mixed bus compressor. But find a mixed bus compressor, try it out for yourself, see how you like it. It's not something that you have to do, but most engineers do like to apply mixed bus compression to their mixes. You've got the choices of the ones that I've shown here, plus many others that companies make. I want to show you now a cool trick in using multiband compression. So remember, a multiband compressor is a compressor that allows you to compress individual ranges of frequencies. So I have the McDSP, and this is the MC303, which is their 3-band compressor. I don't use multi-band compression a lot, but one thing I will tend to do with the multi-band compressor is use it to tame plosives in a vocal. Now if I have 1 or 2 plosives, I will just edit that manually, but if I have a lot of plosives, this could be a good way to tame your plosives. A plosive is the loud burst of energy when you say words that begin with a P or B. That burst of energy causes what we call a plosive. So I'm going to play this vocal, and it has 2 plosives in it, and let's listen.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you.
So we have 2 plosives there. We have picket, fence, and picture. Listen one more time and listen to the strong burst of energy on the P words in picket and picture.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you.
So let's use this multi-band compressor to tame those plosives. So I'm going to turn on the compressor, and the first thing we want to do is find where the plosive is. So with a multi-band compressor, you can solo your frequencies. I'm using the first band, which is set to 194 hertz and below. So I'm going to bring this down to 82 hertz. I'm going to play it, solo it. So now we're just listening to just 80 hertz and below in this vocal, and I'm going to try to find where this plosive is. Well, when you find the plosive, you're going to hear that burst of energy, but you don't want to hear much of the vocal. Now let's turn up the gain so we can hear it a lot better. So you can hear we're starting to clip, and those are those low bursts of energy. So I'm going to move my band around and see if I can find where that plosive is. Okay, so that sounds good at 147. Let's take it up to 200. We want to make sure we're not getting too much of the vocal. I'm going to take it back to 150, and let's start there. So now that we've determined where the plosive is, we want to do is find what we need to set our threshold to. So I'm going to watch the input here, and let's bring our gain back down. And where it hits the P, the picket and picture, I'm going to take a look at my input meter and see where that input is, so I'll know where to set the threshold to compress that part.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you.
So it looks like it's at negative 10 on the threshold. I'm going to go down to negative 16 just to go a little past the threshold to make sure that we're compressing there. We'll stick with a 4-to-1 ratio here. Attack, I'm going to speed up the attack here because I want this to happen really quickly. I'll just stick with 1 millisecond. And the release, 160, we'll leave that there for now. And let's take a listen and see what we have.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you.
So we're not getting a lot of compression there, so we need to lower the threshold. So let's bring it down to negative 22, and let's see how much compression we get now.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you, but it really don't matter anyway.
Okay, so I'm happy with that there. You see we're getting about 6 dB or a little 6 dB, a little bit more compression on just that low part, just that 150 hertz and below. And you can hear that plosive now sounds more level with the rest of the vocal. Let's take it out and listen to it again.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you.
And with it in.
You see a house, a picket fence, and a little doggy too. I'm telling you I don't fit that picture. I'm trying to plead with you.
So using a multiband compressor, using just the low end and finding the frequency and below where that plosive is, can really help tame that, as you can see here. Another thing you can do for plosives is apply a high-pass filter, which you should be doing on your vocal anyway. If there's a low-end rumble that you see on the vocal, that can help with the plosive, but sometimes it doesn't get rid of it completely. So this is using multiband compression for taming plosives. Let's talk about automating compressor controls now. This isn't something that I do often. I actually rarely do it. However, it's a very good thing to know when you're using compression, is that you have the ability to automate the controls on a compressor. So automation is drawing in control changes and having your DAW do that for you rather than you doing it on your own. If you've seen the moving faders on a recording console where the moving faders are just going up and down, that is automation that's making that happen. You can write automation into your software and tell it to move the volume up here and move it down here. And you can do this easily in Studio One. Now all DAWs have automation. They all function a little differently. What I'm going to show you is how it works in Studio One. If you're not using Studio One, you need to find out how automation works in your DAW before doing this. I'm going to play for you this part of the vocal, and let me bypass the compression that we have now. And we'll take a listen to this vocal without compression, then we'll take a listen to it with the settings that I have on it.
And a room for us to share, 'cause you gon' need your wife, yeah. And I promise I'll be there, yeah, baby, I'll be there. I'll be there to love you. Hey, yeah.
Okay, so big, strong note. We want to tame that with some compression. I've got a compressor set. The Waves are comp. Let's turn it on and listen to it with the compression.
And a room for us to share, 'cause you gon' need your wife, yeah. And I promise I'll be there, yeah, baby, I'll be there. I'll be there to love you. Hey, yeah.
Okay, so the compressor is taming that loud part, but let's say, for example, I want to tame it a little bit more. Let's just say from here to here, I'm happy with the compression. But once this big note comes in, I want more gain reduction on that. So the way you can do that is by automating the controls on the compressor. So to do this, I'm going to select my threshold, and in Studio One, it's very easy to use automation, because whatever parameter you want to control, you click on it, and up in this upper left, you'll see it now says threshold. If I click on ratio, changes it to ratio, and so on. So I'm going to select threshold first, come back up here and just grab this and drag it onto the track, and it creates automation for the threshold. So I'm going to zoom in here, make a couple dots, and we'll take this threshold down to, let's just say, 18. Okay, there we go. So now once this part happens, the compressor is going to automatically go down to a -18 threshold, and when it's done, it's going to go back up to the -12 that I had set before. Let's do the same thing with the ratio. I'm using a 3-to-1 ratio. What I want to do now is use a 10-to-1 ratio here. Okay. So I'm going to play this now, and let's watch the compressor, and you'll see that the threshold and the ratio, once this big note happens, is going to move to the parameters that I changed it to, but only for that part.
And I promise I'll be there. Yeah, baby, I'll be there. I'll be there to love you. Hey, yeah.
One more time.
And I promise I'll be there. Yeah, baby, I'll be there. I'll be there to love you. Hey.
So you can see that automating controls on a compressor can be very powerful when you're mixing, and you can do this for anything. You can automate EQs, you can automate mute, volume, the panning. A lot of people overlook automating plugins though. So that's an example of automating your compressor plugins to control exactly how you want to compress something. Let's take a look now at volume automation post compression. So a popular use for automation and compression is volume automation post compression. What this means is that you're automating the volume of the track after the compression happens. The reason that you want to do this is because when you're reducing gain of a signal with a compressor, sometimes words can get buried or instrument parts can get buried during the compression. So I'm going to play this vocal. I've got a compressor set for it. I'm going to play a part of it, and we'll pick out the words that has been kind of buried with the compression, and we'll use automation, or we'll use volume automation to bring those parts back up so they're audible with the compression.
Push the clutch down. Get me out of fourth gear, boy. Take me far away from home. You got my heartbeat faster.
So this last phrase here, you got my heart beating faster. Listen to how that's kind of buried.
Push the clutch down. Get me out of fourth gear, boy. Take me far away from home. You got my heartbeat faster.
Yeah, the "you got me" is really buried, and it's under the beat and not as audible as the rest of the lyrics. Let's listen to that part one more time.
You got my heartbeat faster.
So what we're going to do is use volume automation to bring up that part. So we're going to go to let me find that track. Here it is. And so what we're going to do, the same thing we did with the compressor controls, but this is just the fader. Right now it's at 0. I'm going to just bump it up 2.5 dB. Alright, and then now let's take a listen to it.
Push the clutch down. Get me out of fourth gear, boy. Take me far away from home. You got my heartbeat faster.
So it's better. It can use a little bit more volume, so we'll zoom in, and we're at 2.6. Let's take it up to, we can do 4.6. We'll add 2 dB to it. Alright, there we go. So you'll notice when this part part happens, if you watch the fader, you'll notice that the fader goes up because I've written in now 4.6 dB of gain on the fader. So I'm telling the software that once this part happens, turn this fader up. Alright, let's take a listen now.
Push the clutch down. Get me out of fourth gear, boy. Take me far away from home. You got my heart beating faster. Highway.
Now that sounds perfect to me. Let's listen one more time.
Push the clutch down. Get me out of fourth gear, boy. Take me far away from home. You got my heart beating faster. Highway.
And let's just turn off the automation and listen to it one more time without it.
Push the clutch down. Get me out of fourth gear, boy. Take me far away from home. You got my heart beating faster. Highway.
So you can see there where the adding volume automation post compression can really be helpful. Sometimes this needs to be done on just a word. For this example, it worked on this whole phrase. And you know, really with the ending of that verse going into the hook, you don't want that to be soft. You want that to be nice and strong, so you want to bring up the gain on that. So there's an example of volume automation post compression. You can struggle with, you know, getting a compressor set just perfectly, but sometimes that's not going to happen. And that is why automation can be very helpful to use, especially volume automation, once you've set your compressor. So, you know, if your compressor is burying some words or burying some parts, just use your volume automation to bring those parts or just those words back up to where they're audible with the rest of the compressed track. So this concludes my audio engineering all about compression course. I hope everyone enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. I want to leave you with my contact information. So here's my email address. This is the best way to get a hold of me. Also, here is my website. This is my Twitter handle. And this is my YouTube page. You can tweet me. For some reason, not all of my notifications get to me. So the easiest way to get in contact with me is to email me. And also, if you want to be updated on future courses that I do, as well as anything else that I do that's going on with me, you can go to my website and join my mailing list. I'll send this out, you know, maybe once a month. It won't happen too often, but you know, whenever I put new courses up, new YouTube videos, new blog posts, I send them out in my mailing list. And some parts of this course, I will put a PDF in this course that you can download and keep with you and use to help you with your compression. And please give me feedback and review the course. Let me know what you thought of it. Also, any questions that you have, again, you can email me. You can also start a discussion on the course, and I'll be sure to get back. And again, I thank everyone for subscribing to this course.